the International Criminal Court has taken an unprecedented step by issuing the first 2 arrest warrants for alleged war crimes in Ukraine. One of the warrants is directed at Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is accused of illegally deporting Ukrainian children. This is an unprecedented move, as it marks the first time that the ICC has requested the arrest of a sitting head of state. It is also the first time in its history that the ICC has called for the arrest of the president of one of the 5 veto powers in the United Nations Security Council. The alleged actions took place in Ukraine beginning on February 24, 2022, when Russia initiated its full-scale invasion of the Eastern European nation. Additionally, the court noted that the Russian president did not exercise his authority to detain individuals responsible for the deportation of minors. On the other hand, Moscow denies that it committed war crimes during the invasion. According to the court, the reason why he bears personal responsibility is that he holds the position of the head of the state. This implies that he either participated in the acts himself, with the help of others, or through others. Alternatively, he failed to properly supervise his subordinates, who either committed the acts or allowed them to happen, and who were under his control and authority. Consequently, a second arrest warrant has been issued against the Russian politician Maria Lvova, Presidential Commissioner for the Rights of the Child in Russia, with the same accusation. The court has evaluated that there are rational justifications to believe that Lvova is accountable for the criminal activities that took place after February 24, 2022, which is when Russia initiated its complete invasion of Ukraine. On the contrary, the official expressed pride in her work to relocate minors from the territories of eastern Ukraine that Russia considers part of its state. Consistently referred to the action as an evacuation, and justified it as a measure to safeguard the interests of children. However, according to Ukrainian authorities, these actions fall under the category of deportation and genocide under international law. It is wonderful that the international community has appreciated this work to help the children of our country, said Lvova. But what exactly does it mean? Can Putin be detained in the context of the war between Ukraine and Russia? In brief, the chances of that happening are very low. Russia has not become a member of the International Criminal Court as it did not ratify the Rome Statute, even though it had signed it in 2000. However, after annexing Crimea in 2016, Russia withdrew its signature from the Rome Statute. On the other hand, Ukraine has also not ratified the treaty, but has acknowledged the ICC's authority to investigate war crimes that took place within its borders. As a result, the ICC has the power to hold Russian nationals, including the president, accountable for any offenses committed during the conflict in Ukraine. Moreover, the issuance of the arrest warrant is perceived as a sign from the global community that the events unfolding in Ukraine are a violation of international law. The court has stated that the reason for issuing the warrant is the ongoing commission of these crimes and aims to deter any future criminal acts. Russia has largely ignored the ICC's arrest warrants, deeming them insignificant. The Kremlin has gone as far as to deny that its troops have carried out any atrocities in Ukraine, and Putin's spokesperson described the ICC's decision as outrageous and unacceptable. Given the Kremlin's response, it is doubtful that the ICC's actions will have any effect on Russia's conflict in Ukraine, and Putin's special military operation will probably continue unimpeded. At present, the Russian leader enjoys undisputed power in his homeland, so there is no prospect of the Kremlin handing him over to the ICC. Putin is safe from arrest as long as he stays in Russia. However, if he were to leave the country, he could potentially be arrested. Due to international sanctions already placed on him, it is unlikely that he would visit any country that wants to prosecute him. Since the invasion of Ukraine by Russian troops in February 2022, Putin has visited only 8 countries. 7 of those countries were once part of the Soviet Union and are considered to be part of Russia's near abroad. The remaining destination that does not fall into this category is Iran, where he met with Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the theocracy, in July of last year. Since Iran has provided support to the Russian military operations by offering drones and other military equipment, it is improbable that another visit to Tehran would pose any risk to Putin. Chinese President Xi Jinping is planning to visit Russia in the upcoming week, which is being interpreted as a symbol of support for Russian President Vladimir Putin amidst escalating tensions between the East and West over the Ukraine conflict. This move also indicates China's renewed interest in diplomatic relations with other countries. It will be his first visit to Moscow since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, although the two leaders have met face-to-face on 39 occasions. Several Western leaders have attempted to isolate Putin over the ongoing conflict in Ukraine that has lasted for 13 months. Xi Jinping's visit is a diplomatic win for Putin as his troops are engaged in a war of attrition in the eastern Ukrainian region of Donbass. The Kremlin has stated that the meeting will focus on the comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation between the two nations, but Beijing has also acknowledged that the topic of the war will be addressed. Despite not explicitly condemning Moscow's aggression in Ukraine, China has attempted to present itself as neutral during the conflict. Last year, China declared that it had an enduring friendship with Russia and has criticized Western sanctions against Moscow. Beijing has also accused NATO and the US of provoking Russia to take military action. Throughout the conflict, China has maintained that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries must be respected. Last February, China presented a proposal consisting of 12 points to put an end to the war in Ukraine. The proposal emphasized the importance of respecting national sovereignty, but it did not explicitly state that Russia should withdraw its troops from Ukraine. However, the proposal was not well received by Western countries. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian country thinks that the visit of the Chinese president to Russia is a message to the world that Russia has some allies, and it is not alone in the conflict. Therefore, Kyiv is trying to obtain some assurance from Beijing. In February, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky indicated his interest in meeting with Xi Jinping. In an unsealed phone conversation with his Ukrainian counterpart, the Chinese foreign minister expressed Beijing's concern that the conflict with Russia could get out of control and urged talks to find a political solution. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China expressed that China has always maintained an objective and fair stance on the Ukraine issue, is committed to promoting peace and advancing negotiations, and calls on the international community to create the necessary conditions for the settlement of the conflict. Subsequently, Xi's upcoming trip to Russia may encounter some challenges due to the previously mentioned announcement by the International Criminal Court of an arrest warrant for Putin on war crimes charges. Although China does not recognize the warrant and is not a party to the ICC, its public support for Putin during the visit could undermine its efforts to maintain a neutral stance and be viewed as a potential mediator in the Ukraine conflict. The new National Cybersecurity Strategy of the United States has been unveiled with a focus on China and Russia. Focused on China and Russia, the Biden administration approved an updated version of the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which was initially released in 2018. The purpose of this document is to provide citizens with a secure, robust, and adaptable digital ecosystem while upholding certain fundamental values such as economic growth, protection of human rights, preservation of democratic institutions, and promotion of social equality. Unfortunately, these values are being undermined in the virtual world by a range of factors, including authoritarian tactics, theft of sensitive data and intellectual property, dissemination of fake news, targeting of vital infrastructure, proliferation of hate speech and extremist content, and criminal behavior. This National Cybersecurity Strategy is more ambitious than its predecessor, despite being relatively brief. One significant aspect of the strategy, referred to by White House official Chris Inglis as a new cyber social contract, involves a redefined distribution of responsibilities for preventing and mitigating cyber attacks. To this end, mandatory regulations will be imposed on private companies from various sectors to combat different types of cyber threats. The move towards mandatory regulations is a response to the inadequacy of the previous policy of inviting private companies to adhere voluntarily to cybersecurity guidelines, as it was not always met with positive responses. This is because the adoption of cybersecurity standards and norms can impede the innovation and profitability of the private sector. Another noteworthy aspect of the strategy is that it moves away from a purely defensive approach. This means that defense, intelligence, and law enforcement organizations are now permitted to plan and carry out offensive cyber operations against both state and non-state actors who pose a threat to national interests. It's important to note that these cyber attacks may not necessarily be a response to attacks suffered, as they can also be preemptive in nature. The strategy includes a section dedicated to disrupting or dismantling hostile actions. The strategy is clear in identifying China as the United States' most significant and persistent threat, both to government networks and the private sector. It identifies two critical aspects of China's behavior, namely its continuous cyber-espionage activities targeting intellectual property, and its use of the Internet and social media as a tool for authoritarian control, suppressing citizens' rights and freedoms. The strategy also mentions Russia's cyber activities and its use of cyber tools to destabilize other countries' governments and interfere in their internal affairs. Putin's regime specifically targets critical infrastructure in Ukraine during its military invasion last year. The strategy also recognizes Iran and North Korea as top-tier state adversaries in the cyberspace domain.